Welcome to the Redvee TV Show, supported by Chapel House Cars for the 2024 season. As Saints travel to classy Cass this Friday evening, hoping to get themselves back on the wagon. But do we need to make changes, Kevin?
I think we may need to make changes in personnel, and we may need to make changes in execution of defensive patterns. Yeah, and I'd probably need to make changes from eating the Freddo chocolate pie that I had last time I was in Castleford, because I want to make sure this Redvee top carries on fitting me throughout the year.
Yes. So if we are terrible, there is a hog roast as well.
Yeah.
Hands up, people had a go with us on socials. Basically, I think somebody was saying about you keep banging on about the defensive record. It was the second best defensive start in Super League over 8 or 9 games.
Yeah.
As good as the defense has been, Kevin, did that say a lot about, in general, the standard of the opposition? Given, yes, we did it against the lesser teams. We did manage it against Wigan, but on 2 occasions in the last month or so, when we've come across fairly decent sides in Warrington and a good side in Hull KR, we've been absolutely snotted on both occasions.
It's difficult to say, isn't it, that when we get into them big games, or the bigger games, and obviously you can't include Wigan in this, that we don't seem to be performing, do we? I think it was almost a similar tale for both games, for both the Warrington and the Hull KR games, that you're in it at half time. And I think Hull KR, there were more bright signs. So we were trying to get the ball out to the wing and trying to kind of go from side to side. But you're in it at half time, and then the second half, it just seems like we fall away for whatever reason that is. And I know Wello's mentioned kind of it being as a unit and there being a lack of effort. I think he's worded it as with our team. Unfortunately, I think you've got to look at it that the opposition has got something to do with it, and the fact that we have done it against some lesser opposition and not quite done it against teams who, in big games, that we're going over there, we're not necessarily expecting. Okay, as we've mentioned it in the past, that we should be looking at winning 8 out of the 10 games coming up. We're not expecting to go over there and definitely win, but you're expecting to go over there and put a proper challenge in, a full 80-minute challenge, and come away going, great game, we just came up short, or great game, we've nicked it there. And we get to them games are a little bit tougher for us.
Yeah. If that half-time score had been reflected at the end of the game, you'd have gone, yeah, fair enough, we've given a good crack. That second half performance wasn't acceptable. And did you say Wellens had used the language of the effort wasn't there? That's unacceptable.
Yeah, I don't think he's. I've watched the presser very, very quickly. I've not had time to sit and watch it and kind of take like notes from it or anything. But I think it feels like not gone there and done ourselves justice. And we've gone away from what he said at halftime. I know he did say that we'd left 10 or 12 points out there, and all we had to do was fix up a couple of things defensively. And we haven't done that. In the second half, we just haven't done that. And you get what you deserve out of games like that, especially ones where you get turned and turned and turned like that, where you're coming away with a 20-point defeat. That, I mean, the effort just looked like it had disappeared to some extent in that second half.
The thing for me is when the discipline is there and we keep games tight and we get down the field, that's our opportunity to score points. We're never going to score from deep. And then when our discipline goes and we're on the wrong side of the penalty count and we go 12 points down in a game, it almost looks at this moment in time as that's it, forget it, because teams will manage possession and they'll know we can't score from deep. And as long as they then play it, if they keep it clean, we're going to struggle. We need almost like a repeat set to get ourselves down the field. And for me, that comes back to missing Alex Walmsley, missing Iggy Parsi, and the lack of go forward at times. And I know, listen, people saying, well, we should have signed a prop. Well, you can't necessarily go out and sign a prop because you've got Parsi under contract. It's in terms of the salary cap, you can't just go and blow a load of money on a top class front rower. A, because they're not available, and B, you wouldn't be able to get them under the cap. And that's left us a bit light. And I think we've gone with, well, we'll bulk Sione up, which to be fair has worked, and we'll spell Morgan Knowles there, we'll spell Curtis Sirenin there. And it almost feels at this moment in time, it's round pegs in square holes, or square pegs in round holes, whatever the saying is.
Either way, yeah.
And then because you're doing that, you've then lost what's best about Morgan Knowles at loose forward, what's best about Curtis Sirenin, Joe Batchelor, and the likes as second rowers. And it's made us dysfunctional. And then on top of that, we've not as pacey as we'd like in the back line, and Lewis Dodd is bang out of form. And when you combine all that in one big cauldron, you're getting performances like we've seen.
Right, end of show. Get the squads up. That'll do. Yeah, I take your point. I mean, you even look at the 12 points that we did come from behind and win the game against Huddersfield, where it was an interception that's got us onto the board, and Jake Connor switching off when Clark scoots over from dummy half. I mean, Clark's still got to finish that. Tommy Makinson's still got to finish that. But yeah, I take your point. I mean, what was it? 50-odd minutes before we saw Curtis Sirenin at the weekend. And I know we were down an interchange because of Matt Whitley getting injured. But you've got to get players like that on the park. You've got to have Curtis Sirenin play. You've got to get him involved. And people, I know it's obviously the hindsight thing, because people will say, well, and people have rightly said this, we've stocked up on second rowers. And I think that is in the thought process that we'll bulk a couple of lads up and put them in the front row. Like, as you mentioned, Sione. And people might say, well, we possibly shouldn't have signed Matt Whitley and we should have used that wage for a front rower. But the issue is fitting him under the cap, and we don't know what cap space we had available at that point. We needed someone in the back line, because you know full well that if we'd have gone with Ben Davis as your first choice, kind of in there, and move Percy to the wing, again, people will be up in arms with it. It's tough, but you've got to look at what we've taken away, as we've mentioned a couple of times, what we've taken away from the lads who have been playing in the second row and have now been pushed up front. Sione is the one who doesn't seem to have taken too much out of that. It just seems like he goes out and relishes it, and is probably so far our standout performer, or one of our standout performers of the season.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few posts, obviously talking about saying recruitment's not been great over the last few years, but then the squad was on top, and you look at the players we have brought in: James Bell, great; Sione, great; Joe Batch has proven to be a good signing, and I say others saying, well, we've signed players on the cheap. Wonga Blake's not come cheap, and when you and hindsight is a wonderful thing, and I will say, by the way, I think Blake is beginning to perform much better in recent weeks. I think he's got better, and I think there's still improvement there. But it's all right looking at these things in hindsight. At the time, people were begging for Wonga Blake to sign for us. I did go back and look the other day about when Lewis Dodd signed his contract to renew his deal at the club in, I think it was April 2022, and I pulled up just the club's Facebook just to have a nosy at it. It got 547 likes and loves, and every comment was saying how fantastic it was. Has it worked out as we'd have liked? Well, he's not quite come back the same player since his injury. We're not seeing the form we know he had previously. I think whereas rugby league differs to football is you commit to things. You commit to a contract for a player, and you potentially have to go with that squad. It's not like football where you can get to the January transfer window, and if things aren't going well in your Man City, you can just blow someone away and I'll spend another £20 million to bring a player in, or more if you're Chelsea. You tend to, your squad that you go with, you basically a lot of the time sink or swim with it. And at the moment in time, we're hovering with armbands on.
Well, you say, yeah, I suppose so. We're top of the league, joint top.
No,
third.
no. I'm going to go back, Kev. You don't believe in joint top. We're third.
No, we're third. Yeah, and that is the one thing I've kind of taken from the bits that I've heard from Wello over the week. Like you talk about kind of the retention, and again, I think we mentioned it last week where Wello said we're not going to have a large turnover. We're also not going to give away our secrets and who we're in for and who we're not in for. And I'm sure. Well, there's a report about Mark Sneed that was on. I read that today, saying that he'd spoken to clubs. Now that's come out of the blue, hasn't it?
We're definitely not signing Jacob Miller.
No, we're definitely not signing Jacob Miller. But yeah, going back to it, yeah. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, and I think it's just a case of sometimes you've just got to own an opinion, and you're allowed to change it. You are allowed to change it, but you've got to recognise that you've actually owned a different opinion in the past.
Yeah, we're not as good as we were. I think we can all see that this moment in time, and I think equally, the likes of Hull KR have improved. Warrington, well, couldn't have got any worse in the last few years. So they've improved until about round 15 when they'll sink again as usual. Leave with the chin. But that's what they usually do. Listen, when you make predictions, you have to use past experiences. Warrington are on their usual good start. But teams have improved.
Yeah.
And I think that's, when you look at the Super League table, the top 6 are all on 14 points. 7th, 12 points. Huddersfield, 10. And then there's a drop off to Lee, Castleford, and Hull. And again, Lee is a surprise being that far down. Now this weekend we're playing Cass. If we get the win, Warrington play Hull KR, so one of them will drop points, if not both, if it's a draw. Wigan have got a tough game against Huddersfield. Every week is competitive, and you always talk about wanting a competitive Super League where the results are in doubt. That's what we've now got.
Yeah.
Going to Cass with Cass picking up isn't a gimme, is it?
No, it's a banana skin. I think the thing is, we all want the league to be competitive. Like I want there to be a different winner of the Grand Final and Challenge Cup every year. Well, Saints. I'd like us to play somebody different in the final, but I obviously want us to win it all the time. And going back to that being third, and how we played against Hull KR at the weekend, we started showing little bits of good stuff in that first half, I thought. Only little bits. I'm not going to get carried away with it. But there was a quote after the game from Wello in his presser, which I did actually make a note of. And he referenced the whole game and said how he was happier with the nil-in than the 54 points. And he said, I'd rather win that game 12-0 than 42-22. What holds up in big games is the resilience, the attitude, and the work ethic. And I get what he means, because he's obviously saying you don't concede points, you should win the game. You should be scoring a try or two of your own. And he said in his presser beforehand something about if we use our energy in defence and that takes away from our attacking a little bit, he's more accepting of that than the other way around. The problem is, as people who want entertainment, you've got to have a little bit of both. and that I'd rather win the game 12-0 than 42-22, does that bite us on the behind that last year we finished third because of an inferior points difference? This year we are third because of an inferior points difference. And sometimes you have got to take that little bit of a handbrake off. Not too much, but let them loose a little bit while it's wanting the best of both worlds here, isn't it? You've got to let the attack loose a little bit and take it that you might concede a couple more points than you'd usually be comfortable with. I'm not saying you can be comfortable with that second half performance, but you've got to give a little and obviously lose a little somewhere else. And it is getting that balance right.
I will say it, and it's a mantra we've always talked about. If you go through the years we've been doing Redvee, we use the saying, like the NFL, defense wins championships. If there's one criticism I'm going to make of Wello in those comments, it would be the savviness of actually saying it. Even if that's what you think, listen, kudos for the honesty, but maybe a little bit of savviness would have been, do you know what, just all that to yourself, because the way
I think
the fan base is at the moment are concerned about things, it probably isn't something that needed to be said publicly.
I think the first one about rather win 12-0 than 42-22 is just the raw emotion of you've just been turned over by Hull KR.
I'd rather win 1-0 than lose a game.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, from an Everton fan, you'd rather just turn out the wins. I know I would as a Burnley fan, rather turn out the wins. So as anything, you win. You're there to win, but also you've got to balance that with entertaining. Because if you're just putting out, the issue is, and the bigger issue is, if you're putting out wins, that doesn't necessarily sell tickets. It doesn't.
Well, as we discussed before we came on air, Everton have got progressively worse over the last 10 years and have somehow ended up with a season ticket waiting list of 30,000. We're just gluttons for punishment.
Yeah, if winning meant that people bought more season tickets, the ground would be full every single week. Whether you're playing Castleford, whether you're playing Wigan, whether you're playing Huddersfield, the ground would be full because we won.
I'll counter that then, Kev. I'll counter that with, if Saints were getting turned over 40 points to 38 every week, there'd be a mutiny.
Oh, of course there would. Yeah, there would.
Winning has to come before entertainment.
It does, but you've got to be mindful of it.
You have, but first of all, you've got to be winning, and then you look at the entertainment afterwards. That said, we've lost 3 games in the league. Yeah. Same as everyone else, pretty much. So we're not too bad on the points on the board. We just need to add some entertainment with it. Now, before we go on to the squads, I'm going to give you the changes I think we need to make. And listen, this is me, non-rugby league expert. Until we get Parsi or Al back, we need to put a big prop in the side, either starting on the bench. So for me, Noah Stevens needs to be blooded now. Because having that extra prop in the team allows you to put other players back where they should be playing. Which brings us to Bachelor, Matt Whitley. I know Matt Whitley's now injured and going to be out for a bit with that shoulder injury he's got. But I want Joe Bachelor to be the Joe Bachelor of the last couple of years. And if that means making him slightly more streamlined and getting him doing what he does best, that is more beneficial to the team than trying to bulk him up to help out the forwards. And Lewis Dodd, and this isn't going to be a reaction to going to the NRL, let's get rid. I think Lewis Dodd over the next few weeks has got to show more. We've got a run of games now where we should win the next 5-6 games. He needs to be showing more, because if he doesn't, there are other options there. And so if he doesn't start showing more, I would run with looking at giving Moses and Bay a run at 7 alongside Johnny Lomax. That allows Clark to play 9, allows Wellesby to play 1, and it gets you better players in the team. And then you potentially keep Lewis involved by using him off the bench to spell Daryl Clark at 9. And you've still got that option then if you need a half to come in. I'm not saying you jettison them out, because that's ridiculous. I've seen some people saying, well, when they've signed for another club, they should be sat down for the rest of the year. Okay, then. We all pretty much assume Tommy Makinson to Catalan is a done deal. Is he not playing? Should Matt Whitley have not played for Catalan for the final 5 months of his contract because he'd signed for us? I'm sorry, that's just the way of the world. We might not like it the way it is, where transfers come out in May time. Unfortunately, that's rugby league for you. It's something I don't agree with, but it does happen. It's what it is. They were the changes I'd be looking to make to try and improve things.
Yeah, I understand the Noah Stevens one. I think the only thing is a word of caution with Noah, and it's not necessarily for you. It's just the greater expectation of bringing a big prop in, who you're hoping is going to do a job similar to Alex Walmsley and Iggy Parsi. It's just tempering. I'm not saying it's you. I'm just tempering the thing of you might be putting a big body on there, but I'm a big body. I'm not going to make them meters. Noah needs to be allowed.
Are you sure?
I wouldn't make them meters, but I struggle getting up to now. I'm only joking. You've got to allow him to get into the game. So not go into Castleford and think he's going to make 100 meters. Not then be playing against Leeds and doing the same. He's got to be allowed to find his way. This isn't directed at you because you've just come up with that. It's the fact of, you look back to what you just mentioned about Lewis Dodd, and Lewis Dodd being everybody lauding the re-signing of Lewis Dodd. And now we're looking at the next big thing out of the academy. Let the lads, instead of being the next big thing out of the academy, let them just breathe in the first team.
This is where I think Wello hasn't done the best job in terms of, we're now having to put players in because we need to put them in. So we needed to play T. Ritson at Hull KR at the weekend because Tommy Makinson got chicken pox, which you can't legislate for. But if you go back on our previous episodes, we've discussed rotation. Should T. Ritson have played against Hull FC at home to get him game time? So when a big game comes up down the line and you relying on people, they've had some game time. This is why I think this week would be perfect for Noah. You're playing Castleford, who aren't any easy beats by any means, given what's gone on in recent weeks. But it's the best opportunity, aside from London, looking at the league table, to blood him. Because you don't know, in 2 or 3 weeks down the line, you suddenly get a couple of injuries and you might need him against Catalan. And that's where you don't want him to be making his debut.
But the thing with Hull is, I gave it the opinion of, I didn't think we made that many changes against Hull because of the result the week before.
I think at times you've give players a squad number for a reason, and I get you don't just because you've got a squad number, it's not a charity. You have to earn your shirt. But I think sometimes for the good of the squad, you have to blood players now and again.
I don't disagree.
I'm not suggesting Noah Stevens comes in and plays the rest of the season. But you've got next week. You've got this week against Castleford. If he plays well, you potentially look at holding his shirt for Leeds. If he needs to drop out for Catalan, there you go. Hopefully, you're only about 4 or 5 weeks from getting Parsi game time.
Yeah.
The way the table is at this moment in time, and I've said, I think when I put them fixtures up a couple of weeks ago, I said there was 8 out of 10 I expect us to win. The 2 I didn't, or was Hull KR away, which we've lost, and Wigan away is a banana skin for anyone. That you could win that. You could lose that with the team in the best form ever. It's a derby. But we've got a run of 6 games now. We've won 2, lost 1. We've got 6 games now where I expect us to win the next 6. Maybe not comfortably, but I expect us to win. And then that leads us into Wigan in game 10. If we do that, we will be at the top of the table, in the top 2. And then by the time the business end of the season comes round, and you've got Alex Walmsley back, you've got Iggy Parsi back, you can have Matt Whitley, hopefully recovered. We believe Morgan Knowles might be facing a spell on the sidelines. Get everybody back at the end of the year. Be in a position to, do you know what? We might not have had the greatest year, but you could potentially win your last 2 or 3 games and be champions again.
Do a Leeds.
Is it likely at this moment? Well, not even do a Leeds, because Leeds were crap and finished fifth sometimes and won it. We can be in the top two, and I think, to be fair, for us to do it, I think we need a home semi-final to give ourselves a chance.
Yeah,
As we said at the weekend, I think if you're going to be going to Hull KR away, Catalan away, I think your chances are probably gone. Are we favourites at this moment in time? Absolutely not. Other teams are showing their credentials much more than us, but trophies aren't won in May. Well, in rugby league anyway.
No, not in rugby league.
Right,
Yeah,
that's the rant from me.
but as I say, I don't disagree with you about Noah Stevens coming in and the fact that he probably should have been in beforehand. That whole game would have been perfect, but I think the reason behind that was the fact that we played so poorly in that second half against Warrington. You're right. You need to make sure that these kids, you're not throwing away a good kid here. They need to have that game time. 100% right. I've actually named him in the team that I've written here, the team that I'd go with, and the team that I think Wello would go with is actually my list.
The other thing I want to see Wello do as well, he threatened changes after Warrington. He gave them another chance against Hull. 2 weeks down the line, they've let him down again.
Yeah.
He's threatened changes again. Do you know what? You've got to follow through with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just for your own authority.
Yeah, I think so. I think absolutely, mate. You're right. Do I think he will?
I think injuries might force our hand as we go on to discuss. So we are back at it, Cass. Wow, that was a good introduction to the episode.
Brilliant.
Hey, Kev, do you want a fact before we go any further? Our video from Saturday against Hull KR, in the 7 years we've been doing Redvee TV, is already the third most watched ever.
Wow. Some go with that.
There's the only two that have had more viewers were Kev Cunningham drunk at Wembley
and
getting beat by Warrington.
Catalan away last year? No,
Kev Cunningham drunk at the cup final after getting beat by Warrington.
Yeah,
which is an all-time classic. And Lee beating Saints for the first time.
Oh, was that the freezing cold when they came back up and it was freezing?
Yeah, that's had 9,500 views. I'm sure Lee fans keep watching that over and over.
Possibly.
So losing Kev, good for business. Right, talk us through the squad.
Back in Tommy Makinson, as we can see there in this picture, no chicken pox to show. As Sam Royal comes back in, I'm dropping out Morgan Knowles and Matt Whitley, both through injury.
What do you think is going to happen, Kevin?
I think pretty much as you would expect for Castleford, with the exception of Noah Stevens possibly making the bench. So I think Welsby, Makinson, Hurrell, Percival, Blake, Lomax, Dodd, Lees, Clark, and Mbai, doesn't matter which one, Matautia, Batchelor, Sirinen, Bell, Delaney, Clark, or Mbai, depending on which one hasn't started, Stevens and Wingfield.
So who misses out? Sorry, I wasn't listening. I was too busy putting chicken pox on Tommy.
That's not what you've done. John Bennison, Ben Davis, Sam Royal, T. Ritton. I think that's what Wello will go with. But what I would go with is possibly, and it's not making Connie a scapegoat, but I'll probably give Connie a week off. I think he's the one of the him and Percy are the ones who make you the meters consistently out of the back line, and we're trying to do that last week. I know Tom does as well. That's unfair on him, but you know what you're getting with him. So if Connie needs a week, this would be a great one to give him, where he can take a week off. You could put Blake next to Makinson, and you can keep Ritson out there. But I don't think that'll happen. I think he'll go with Connie. I do think you've got to keep Connie fit, but I just think if you're going to give people a rest and give him the options, I think there's more issues almost in the forwards, as you say, with players being bulked up. And as long as Cass don't run the same route of putting big lads through our halves, I think there's more issues in the forwards, and I think that's probably where we need the changes. But there are probably longer term changes, as you say. Sorry to pick on Batch, but Batch being bulked up, he hasn't got that kind of dynamism that he has had in previous year.
I'd potentially look at bringing Makinson in for T.
Mm-hmm.
And giving Harrell a week off by giving Ben Davies a run at the centre.
And I think that's fair enough. Yeah. No issues.
Because, again, Ben Davies, he's been on the fringe of the squad. He got 20 minutes against Hull FC, did nothing wrong. The squad aren't performing. Give the lad his chance.
I think it's tough because when you look at that back line, Ritson did nothing wrong to get then drops again. But it's just his pecking order in the team. Percy is our best centre there. Connie's the man who takes you forward, usually. We can all argue about his defensive abilities.
Scored two on Saturday.
Yeah, Tommy is your number one winger. So it's tough to say you're going to drop one of them out. But possibly this is the game, like Hull was at home, that you can make one change in that back line and give somebody a run out and say, well, T, we're going to keep you in the team because I want to see how you're going again, just in case we get an injury or a suspension. So I want to see you go again. As you say, you could throw Ben Davies in. I think he'll go with, as I say, I think he's going to go with what we're used to seeing, and that's Makinson, Harrell, Percy, and Blake.
Yeah. Okay, Cass squad, Kev. Now, Cass, obviously on a little bit of an upturn in form, it's fair to say. Long-term plan.
I think so. Yeah, they are long-term planning, and they've got quite a few out with injury as well at the minute. Sam Essay and Fletcher Rooney are the two who come into the squad for Sam Hall and Sammy Kabula. And yeah, with Cass, they've not planned for this year, have they really? It's a long-term project with them of get a load of younger and more, should you call them inexperienced players, kind of try and fit them round your likes of like Jacob Miller, Paul McShane, Alex Mellor, Joe Westerman, people who've been knocking about for a while. Bring them through, see who works, see who doesn't. And unfortunately for them, they've lost quite a few through injury. And so been able to bring in the likes of Texar, who got released from Hull, Sam Essay, who's on loan from Wigan.
Tactical loan?
In what way?
Just to playing Saints this week?
Well, he's not played much, and Wigan had a dual reg with Wakey, and I don't think Wakey were using any Wigan's players, so it didn't really work out for him. So I think they've cancelled it. It's probably just the case of they need bodies, they're missing people, so they just need people in. As we always say, if you're getting down to having your 31, 33, 34, 35, 36 in your 21-man squad, you know full well you're getting pinched by injuries there, don't you?
Yeah. Cass haven't got much to lose this week. This, again, I'll use the word banana skin again. I think is it reflected in the handicaps? I think Saints were only like -10 when I last looked, which is probably about as big as you'd want to see it.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's made tougher by that second half that we put in last week. It's made tougher by the fact that Castleford have started picking up points and picking up performances. And I think the coach was a bit, I think, did he say it was a point? If you'd have asked him after the first half, it was a point dropped rather than a point gained. And as you say, it's a free hit for him. It's a free hit. And you know what? I'd be really interested in knowing what Saints fans are kind of expecting going over there, because the whole game at home, we were saying, you've got to win that by 40 or 50 just to break almost say it hit par, but it's no win either way. This one, are we expecting to win by 20, 30? Because, I mean, on our day, we can easily do that to a team, but Cass are in, as you say, finding a little bit of form, finding a little bit of rhythm, and do have try scorers. I know you're a fan of Innes Senior, aren't you? I think you mentioned him a couple of times to me in the car on the way to games and that you're a fan of him. And he knows the way to the try line, doesn't he?
I almost think, and again, people want to be entertained, but at this moment in time, we just need to keep the wins ticking over, just to make sure we're in contention when we've got the big bodies and the big players back in the right positions.
Yeah, I think so. I think when you talk about, or when I talk about entertainment, with your away fans, you're always going to get that hardcore away following. And yes, some weeks it's bigger than others, depending on where we're playing, what time we're playing, how people can get there, obviously. So if you're playing Wigan on a Friday night, it's easier to get to than Castleford probably is on a Friday night. You've not got to take half a day off work to get over there or anything like that. So you're always going to have that hardcore element. When you go with entertainment, you're also looking at home fixtures and selling tickets and selling merchandise, everything around that, and getting your floating fans who might decide to come down if Saints are playing well, rather than if we're grinding out victories. For this one, you just want to see the kick on in performance, and then for us to do it again the week after, and again the week after. We spoke about this with Hull. You couldn't read too much into that whole game. You've got to keep kicking on with your performances. You can have slight wobbles, but you can't have a wobble for 40 minutes against the team who's battling to get into that top 4 or top 2.
Okay, then Kev, prediction for Friday?
Saints by 10.
I was going for the handicap draw. Yeah, well, Saints by
13. Go. Yeah. I just think it's going to be a tougher, mate. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we play some good stuff, and I hope we're too strong for them. But again, this is another one of them tight little grounds where the fans are right on top of you. If they're in good voice, it can be a tough place to go. I'm not saying necessarily results-wise, but everyone we've had on Redvee, when we've asked them the question of what's the worst ground you've been to, they always mention the changing rooms at Castleford.
Well, I love Castleford.
I know you do.
I love Castleford. They need to stop trying to modernise it by putting seats in, though. What are they playing at?
I was going to mention that to you. Yeah. I knew you
ruining
like
it. They're ruining the stadium. Leave it as it is. I like it being the time warp. I love... Oh, we're going to have a hog roast, aren't I, Kev?
Yeah, you are. Yeah, probably.
And then I might follow it up with a Freddo cake afterwards.
Yeah.
And then I'll have to work out what I'm going to have at half time.
You know what, though? When we talk about things that you want to see in Super League, making the most of what you've got is definitely it. So Hull KR do it with Craven Street. Cass do it with that little area where they've got all the food vendors down that side. And with the hand that they're dealt at the minute, why not make the most of it? Why not push everything you can out of that ground? Yeah, they're on about they've got the plans in to modernise it. I mean, we've probably heard that for years and years, and hopefully they'll start coming to fruition. But I mean, it's not a Super League ground, but I know what you mean.
It is, Kevin. It is. That's like saying Goodison's not a Premier League ground. It is.
No, Goodison's another shed that needs knocking down. Yeah, after I had to say, I'm sure I've told this story before about missing the only goal of a game because there was a stanchion in my way at Goodison. That's how bad it is, and that was probably about 20 years ago as well. Yeah, but it's a nosy road throwback, isn't it? It's a nosy road throwback.
Right, on the road to Cass, we will be back on Friday night for the instant reaction. Don't forget to like, share.
I was going to say, wasn't our most watched video once when we got knocked out by Cass in the playoffs. And has that been now knocked down?
Oh, it's been knocked down the list. Yeah.
Sorry.
And subscribe. Catch you soon.